Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Dan Doggett, and I am with the Maryland Department of Disabilities IT Accessibility Initiative. And welcome to today's webinar, Accessibility Starting Tools for Web and Docs, Practical Steps for Creating and Testing Accessible Digital Content. Before we dive into today's session, I have a couple of quick housekeeping notes. First, we do have live captioning available today. If you can enable them by clicking the More icon in the Zoom meeting controls bar. Also, today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel for future reference. We will send out an email to all registrants with the link once we have it up for anyone that was not able to join us today. And lastly, please feel free to add your comments and questions to the chat. I do have it up, so I will be looking at it during the presentation, and will be doing my best to answer them as they come in. So, okay, let's go ahead and get started. So today, our key objectives are to understand the importance of accessibility in documents, presentations, and websites, learn to use built-in accessibility tools in Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and Adobe Acrobat, explore some popular web accessibility testing tools, and also recognize the limitations of automated testing tools and the importance of manual testing. Okay. So before we talk about the tools themselves, it's important to take a moment to discuss the importance of digital accessibility and its impact. Accessibility ensures that digital content can be used by everyone, including individuals with disabilities. Not only that, it also enhances usability for all and fosters inclusivity. And here in Maryland, it is a legal requirement at both the state and federal level. At the federal level, we have the Americans with Disabilities Act Title II, and within the state, we have the Maryland Non-Visual Access Clause. So let's take a broad look at these tools. Automated accessibility tools are great for quickly identifying common accessibility issues, such as missing alt text or poor color contrast or incorrect heading structures. And so we're going to look at all these tools. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. So it's our recommendation that you test with multiple tools because they will show things differently. With that said, no tool can detect everything, so it's important to always manually test as well. So let's discuss some of those limitations of these automated tools. For one, they cannot detect all issues, specifically issues that revolve around context, such as reading order or meaningful alt text. You will also occasionally get false positives and false negatives. And I'll show you what that looks like as well. So as I said earlier, it's important to both test multiple different types of tools, test manually, and then remember that context is important. So for example, on this slide here, I have a picture of a nice large brick home, and the alt text below it reads, "Large brick home with snow in the front yard." So that sounds like pretty decent context for the image that you see here. But if that home looks familiar to you, it might be because it was featured in the movie Home Alone, and the picture is from an article about the house being available to rent on Airbnb. So suddenly that contextual information is pretty important and is not relevant. It is not being portrayed in that alt text. So this is, an example of how important that context is and why manual testing is so important. Okay, so let's begin by looking at testing tools related to writing and creating documents. So probably the most common and easiest to use tool is the accessibility checker found in Microsoft Word and PowerPoint. Chances are, if you have any experience with accessibility, you have used these tools in the past. So these are built-in accessibility checkers that help identify basic structural issues, hyperlinks, lists, images. If you've never used them, to enable it, you go to the Review tab and select Check Accessibility. And I'll show you how we do that in a moment. My opinion is, as you're creating your documents, I would recommend just having that accessibility checker running the whole time. It's much, much easier to make your documents accessible from the beginning than it is to go back and fix any sort of heading or structural issues after the fact. And so you can use the checker, and it has a step-by-step process and helps guide you through to make sure that those issues are fixed. It's a little bit more in depth in the PowerPoint checker, because reading order is so crucial with PowerPoint. With Word documents, you're pretty much going left to right, top to bottom. That may not be the case with your PowerPoint presentation. So in order to get to the reading pane, you go to the Check Accessibility button, and there's a little caret to take you down there. So I'll show you how this works. And we want to check our reading order to make sure that the assistive technology, such as screen readers, will read it in the order that was intended. So I see someone has a question here. Cappy, you have a question for us? Feel free to, let me see if I can unmute you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and so Cappy, go ahead. You need to unmute yourself if you are talking now. You're having some issues. Feel free to throw your question in the chat, and we'll come back to you as we do this. So let's go ahead and take a look at a PowerPoint right now. And Cappy, if we can come back if you have that question for us. So let me pull up a PowerPoint now. Okay, so let's take a look at the accessibility checker in PowerPoint. I have here a very quick and dirty PowerPoint presentation. It's got 2 slides, and we are looking at the top ribbon. If I go to Review at the very top, okay, so suddenly I have the Check Accessibility icon right here. And if I click on that, the accessibility assistant, or the accessibility checker, has opened up. And so from here, I can take a look. It's going to show me different things that I need to fix here. And it shows we have a couple things we need to fix here. But one of the things that will always, you know what? I say it always, but I already went and checked it. Will always come up is the reading order. And so let's take a look at the reading order for this. So this is, on this slide, it says, the title is How to Make a Sandwich. And we have step 1, gather your sandwich ingredients. Step 2, place your ingredients on 2 pieces of sandwich bread. Step 3, place one of the slices of bread on top of the other with the ingredients on the inside. And step 4, enjoy. So if I go up to Review again and go to the Check Accessibility icon, there's a little down caret. And from here, I can take a look at the reading order of this page. And again, this is really important for when we, for folks who are using screen readers and other assistive technology. And so here's the reading order here on the right side. If I click on each line, it's highlighting on the screen the next order that it goes in. So we had the title first, and then we had step 1. That's good. So we want it to go down to step 2, but here it's actually going to step 3. So we want to fix this. So in order to do that, it's very easy. I'm just going to find my step 2. And so I'm going to take my step 2, and I'm just going to drag it above what I have for step 3. So I can go through here and just verify. Okay, went step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4. Great. So that's how we verify our reading order, and that looks good to go. So another thing you might notice is we have hard to read contrast. Okay, that obviously is our title. The title has black text and it's in a dark gray background, which is very, very poor contrast. And so if I click on this, it will even give me options for colors to change the contrast. So if I change the text to this, suddenly we don't have that contrast issue. That said, this is, not the most visually appearing contrast, but at least it's readable. So I want to point out that it's you want to be careful with your color contrast because the checker for this is really only looking at the text color and whatever text box color is happening that text is within. So it doesn't actually test for the actual background itself. And so I have a second slide here. And whoops. I have a second slide here that the text background is white and the text itself is black. If I change this text to white and make it completely unreadable, you'll notice that there is no issues being found with the color contrast. The issue only happens if the shape that it's in also conflicts with it. So something for us to keep in mind as you do this. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go back to our presentation. And okay, so Adobe Acrobat also incorporates an automated accessibility checker. An important thing to note, though, about this feature is that it's only available in the paid version, which is called Adobe Acrobat Pro DC. So if you have the version that typically comes standard with your computer, the Adobe Reader, you will not be able to access this feature. So to access the accessibility check in Acrobat Pro, you go to Tools, Accessibility, and do a full check. And this tool identifies similar issues such as alt text or color contrast, but it also will highlight if there are missing tags or unlinked form fields, especially if you're working with complex forms. So when you use the accessibility checker in Adobe Acrobat, there's a tags pane to sort of help correct structural problems. And I'm not going to spend too much time talking about, how to fix those things in Acrobat because we could spend actually our whole time today talking about that. In fact, we actually have 2 other trainings that we have done specifically on fixing accessibility issues in Acrobat. So if you're interested in any of those, they are on our YouTube channel. And I'm happy to provide links for those as well. So the biggest thing that I want folks to take away when it comes to PDFs is that it's super, super important that whatever your source document is, whether it's a Word document or a PowerPoint, before you export to PDF, make sure that document is fully accessible before exporting. It is much, much easier to fix accessibility issues in Word or PowerPoint than it is to then remediate them in Acrobat. Okay, I want to take a moment and check to see if there are any questions about any of these document accessibility tools. So I'm going to take a look in the chat. So Kathy, I'm going to go ahead and put your hand down. And if you can get to your question, please go ahead and add that to the chat and I'll take a look. All right. Moving on, let's talk about our web accessibility tools. So there are many options available for web testing tools, and broadly, they all sort of work the same way. They scan the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript of a website to look for those sort of unique things that we were talking about with the other checkers. So your headings, your links, your images, forms, interactive elements, and they will, flag issues like broken links or missing alt text, just the same way that we were doing with our documents. So generally speaking, these tools evaluate web content against specific accessibility criteria. So if you are familiar with the web content accessibility guidelines, they generally will map to those guidelines or to the 508 compliance standards as well. Okay, so the first tool that we're going to be taking a look at today is called Andy. Andy is a free, it's called a bookmarklet, which is developed by the US Social Security Administration. And it was specifically developed to test web content against Section 508 compliance. So Section 508 is the law that means that all federal documents and web content needs to be digitally accessible. So let's go through some of the benefits and limitations, and then we'll do a quick demo of how that works. So some of the benefits are that it provides detailed feedback on accessibility issues, and it separates them into different categories so that you don't see all the information all at once. It's also completely free to use, and they also provide free training and a certification program to test using the platform. So it's called the 508 Trusted Tester program. So it's a great resource. Some limitations are that due to, if a certain website has specific security measures that don't allow injecting into their script, which is how Andy works, it may not let you use that. It's also, it evaluates specifically towards the 508 standards, which are not the most up-to-date digital accessibility standards. So I think they measure up to the 2.0 web content accessibility guidelines, and we're almost up to 2.2 now. So it's a little bit sort of out of date. But it does cover most of those things, though. So let's take a look at how Andy works. And I have a test website here. This is actually a website from the company DQ, which we'll be talking about a little bit later. And they purposely put in a bunch of digital accessibility errors and issues so that if you're using a testing tool, you can easily flag them. And so Andy, like I said, is a bookmarklet. So once you have it downloaded, it will act as a bookmark. And basically, you just turn it on, and a ribbon will show at the top of your screen. And these are sort of the different sort of navigation categories for you to sort of look at. So they separate them, they call them modules. So you have focusable elements. So those are things that if you're a keyboard user and you tab through, those are things that will, that are in the tab order. They also have graphics and images, links and buttons, structures. So that's things like your headings and lists and things like that. Color contrast, and then hidden content. So when I test with Andy, I typically go, start from each module and investigate things and any errors I see there, and go all the way through. So if we look, let's do focusable elements. And so again, this is really important for folks who either navigate using a keyboard or use a screen reader, because these elements not only are, is there a certain order that they need to go in, but they also will, give different outputs. And so if I want to take a look at the tab order, like um, of the website, I can go up here and just select tab order, and then suddenly all of the focusable elements now have numbers, and that sort of lets me know the order in which you would tab through them. And so typically you want to go, your tab order should go in a logical form. So left to right, top to bottom. And I can do a quick glance at this and see, okay, this is a pretty logical tab order, looks good. And again, this is one of those things that these tools can't actually evaluate themselves. They need you to determine whether or not that's a logical reading order. But let's take a look. So now we've taken a look at our tab order. So we have some alerts here on the right. And the first says elements with no accessible name. This is super important for screen readers because if you're tabbing through and the element does not have a name, it might read blank, it might read, text box or something like that, but it will not give you any indication of what that is. So if I open this up, I can see, if I click on this, you'll notice in the page itself, it will highlight the thing that is causing the issue. So here is a search bar that does not have a name or a title. So as a screen reader user, if I tabbed over to this, it would just say text box or it would say blank. So that's pretty important. So we have got some other stuff over here, but let's go ahead to another module and let's go to color contrast. This is an easy one. And this is, this is looking at the text and the color of the background that text is on. And as you can see, we do have some color contrast errors. They also show you the color code. I think it's the hex code for them. So Maria says, I don't think I am seeing the same screen. Are there other folks having issues seeing my screen? Please let me know in the chat. All right. Maria, I maybe recommend logging out. Linda can see what I'm talking about. Okay. Maria, I would recommend logging out and logging back in. See if that will fix the view for you. So as I was saying, it shows you the color code. And I can just sort of go through here and it shows when something fails and when something passes. What's nice about the fail is that they will also provide a suggested text color. So if you're working with web developers and you say, hey, we've got a color contrast issue, suggest, using this color code, and that will fix that issue for them. Okay, so that's a little bit of Andy. Let me go back to my presentation. Okay, and let's move on. The next tool that I'm going to show you is a tool called Wave. And Wave is a browser extension that was developed by the web accessibility nonprofit WebAIM. And so I will show you how that works. It's a little bit different than how Andy works. Some benefits and limitations. Benefits is it visually marks accessibility errors and has specific icons to sort of let you know what type of error that is. So it's super easy to identify. And also it's completely free to use, which is great. Some limitations of Wave is that the overlay is not adjustable, and sort of it can sometimes get in the way of what you're trying to look at. Also, it displays all errors at once on the page, which can be a little bit, a lot to sort of see. It could be a little bit of an information overload. But I will say that after a while, you do get used to it. When I started with my web testing, I use Wave exclusively. So once you have downloaded the browser extension, you could access Wave. Actually, so there's a couple ways you can use this. So if you don't want to download a specific extension, Wave, their website will allow you to go through their portal and input the URL. So you could do it sort of through their website. I don't love doing this because it tends to sort of get really laggy and slow. So if you can download the browser extension, I would recommend it. So I can access Wave two ways. Once it's downloaded, I can either go up to my browser extensions and select it here, or I can right click and it says wave this page. So I'm going to go ahead and wave this page. And boom. All right. So taking a look at the page, we've got a lot of issues. We've got a lot of icons. And then on the left-hand side, this is the overlay. So that this sort of explains what everything is. And so they give us a sort of a broad summary. So there are 9 errors. There are 13 contrast errors, 8 alerts. There are 18 structural elements and 3 features and 0 uses of ARIA on this page. So let's sort of dig a little bit deeper and see what everything is. So if I click on details, this is where things get a little bit more zoomed in. For me, I have a hard time looking at all of this all at once. So anytime I use Wave, I immediately uncheck most of it so that I can, just take a look at the things that I want to worry about at that moment. So now I can see on the page, once you uncheck those things, they also disappear from the page as well. So now it's a little less overwhelming to look at. And so I can see here we've got 3 images missing alt text. So Wave is really great because they provide so much great information on what this means, what it matters, and how to fix it, which is exactly what we need. If I click on the actual icon on the website, on the web page, so they can show me that reference of what that issue is, then they can also show me the code of where that image is injected in the website and to show me, yeah, okay, so there is no alt attribute here. There needs to be one. So if you are a programmer and you want to look at it, from the code level, or especially if we're looking at things like ARIA, this can be very helpful. So another thing, so similar to Andy, we have the reading order here, and it works the same way. I go here, and it now all of my my tabs are numbered and lets me know where that is. And then I can also look at the structure, our heading structure here, and see how this is. I don't love the way that that Wave does headings. It would be easier to see this on the page, but that's oh, you know what? Yeah, there it is. All right, I guess they listen to my complaints. So, all right, so we have our heading structures, and we can go through here. We also have our color contrast alerts. Same thing here. The same things that were picked up in Andy are being picked up here. Okay, so that is Wave. And I'm going to go back to our presentation now and take a look at our last tool that I'm going to be showing you today, and that is Axe DevTools. It is also a browser extension, and so this test website, I said it was from DQ Systems. Axe DevTools is actually their product that they have developed for testing websites. So that test website is actually developed specifically to test in Axe DevTools, but it will work with any other web accessibility tool as well. Okay, so let's talk about benefits and limitations. In terms of benefits, it integrates directly into the browser's developer window. And I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. And errors, you can highlight and unhighlight them on the website. It makes them very easy to sort of see and comprehend where the issue is. In terms of its limitations, it's not, well, it is, so DQ Systems is a company. They're a for-profit company. So the base level is free, but any of the other, there's other functionality involved that is behind a paywall. So, but it will still show you the same errors that would have happened with Andy or with Wave. So let me show you what that looks like here on the web page. And so to access the developer window, there's different ways to do it based on your browser, but I'm in Chrome, so I'm going to right click and go down to inspect. So I've already downloaded the extension, so I'll show you what this looks like. Oh, let me pull it over here. Okay. So this is the developer window. This gives you, gives a breakdown of the code of the website. Up here, we've got elements, console, sources, network. If I keep going, the last thing here is Axe DevTools. Okay, so that has been installed into the developer window for me. And so if I want to do a full page scan, I can click right here and do that. You'll notice that there are different other different features that are behind a paywall. For instance, if you are part of a large web development team and you use systems like Jira to sort of track your progress, and if you want to throw certain errors into sprints, that's functionality that is behind the paywall. But in terms of just checking for basic accessibility, we can do that here with a full page scan. Okay, and so here we have 29 total issues. And so for this, I can click on each. So the first one says color contrast. So this is not a surprise. And so I can see exactly where these are. If I click highlight, it will highlight the very first example of that. So if we could see up here, we have our first color contrast issue. Nice and clear. Again, more color contrast issues, and so on and so forth. Let's see, what's another one that I can take a look at that we haven't talked about? Oh, this is a good one. So links must be distinguishable without relying on color. So what this is we have a hyperlink here to an email address. And typically, when we link to websites or email or contact email addresses, you want to both use color and usually something else to indicate that. Traditionally, most people will use they will both use a color and underline it. So that picked that up. So different things that we can sort of take a look at here and see. You could just see it's very easy to find those issues. It does give you information on that. If I want to click through and understand this a little bit more, I can dig here and DQ. This is DQ University. That's their website to sort of talk about these issues. So easy to do. I really like using Axe specifically. Well, there's two main reasons I like using it. Number one is because it's in the developer window. I can adjust this to the size that I want. So that's one of the issues with Wave that I tend not to use it as much because of that. Because in Wave, that window is just stuck to the screen. Whereas here, I can make it bigger, I can make it smaller, I can make it on the bottom of the page if I'd rather read it that way. Typically, what I do is, so I have two monitors, and I will actually put my, oh, you can't see it because there it is. So I will move this to my other monitor so that I can see a full screen of what the site I'm testing, and then another full screen of my issues. All right, so let's move back to the presentation. So like I said, they're all great tools. They all sort of work a little bit differently, but they, pretty much, will provide the same information. It's just a little bit about usability and preference in terms of that. Okay, so let's discuss some of the common challenges and best practices for using these tools. So some of the challenges that we know are that automated testing tools, they're not smart. They can produce misleading results. And often, and sometimes they can also overlook critical issues. And I say that I was testing a website recently and I was using Axe. And I did a full page scan on Axe and I got 0 issues, which is remarkable. Usually there's going to be something that gets flagged, especially when, when there are, issues that end up not really being issues. But this had zero results. And then when I went to then go test it with a screen reader, it could not read it at all. So do not overly rely on these. You always want to test it. Test it as someone using a screen reader would use. So I do see some hands up. So I'm going to go ahead and Maria, I see your hand up. Do you have, you can feel free to put your question in the chat, or I will also let you unmute. All right. Maria, I'm not hearing you. If you need to unmute, or you can feel free to throw your question in the chat, taking a look there, but just let me know. All right. Oh, you got the answer already. Okay, great. All right. I'm going to go ahead and just put your hand down so that we can keep going. Oh yeah, like I said, sorry, got a little carried away. So just because something works, passes an automated test does not mean it's accessible. You always want to try that out with a screen reader. So best practices, I know we've said this before, use multiple tools for comprehensive testing. I know that they're working with the same information, but you still want to check different ways. And then test with assistive technologies. NVDA is a free screen reader. If you're not aware of it, you can download it for PC. It's free, and you can test using that. If you are a Mac user, there is a native screen reader called VoiceOver already installed on Apple products that is ready for you to test with. And if you are, a webmaster and you're in charge of a large web system or web page that gets updated frequently, you don't have to do this test. You don't have to do accessibility tests every time you update something, because that would be a lot, especially if you're doing multiple updates, throughout the week. My recommendation is schedule regular site scans. So maybe once a quarter you do an accessibility check. And so when you do those accessibility checks, you can flag, okay, every time we do an accessibility check, we're running into issues with our alt text. We're running into issues with our color contrast. So if you're seeing potential error trends, you can, teach and make improvements so that those things, don't happen to begin with. So that's my recommendation in terms of testing. And then I'm going to go ahead. So the last thing I want to leave you with are some links. So these are the links to the web accessibility tools that we talked about today. So each of those will take you to the websites where you can download them directly. I've also included the website, our website for the IT Accessibility Initiative that has lots of super useful accessibility resources. I've also included the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, or WCAG guidelines from W3C. and then support links for Microsoft and Adobe. And I know that you can't access these yet, but once we have our video ready up on YouTube, I will also send a copy of the slide deck for everyone here today. So with that, I want to see if we have any other questions or if there's anything else I could demo for folks before I leave you today. All right, looking in the chat, and if you feel free, if you need to put your hand up, happy to unmic you or unmute you. Okay. Well, if not, thank you for your time today, and I hope you found some helpful information on today's session, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. So thank you all very much.